Ki te matakai tō hōreri, whanainga, ki te matuai, whakamumia te hei Aotearoa. We begin by remembering the piece of scripture that Inari Wiremu Taratoa wrote on the rules of engagement in 1864 from the Apostle Paul. If your enemy is hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them drink. And it is a saying that applies to this place. So I always use that whenever I start to address people. So welcome to you all. Welcome to the Putake O Te Riri, Church of St George. It's great to have a good number here again tonight. Last week we had a wonderful session with Cliff about the Battle of Pukehinahina, and tonight we hear about the Battle of Te Ranga, which is not often talked about. It's often just kind of snuck in on the end of the talks about Pukehinahina. I know I just kind of do a little 5 minutes whenever I do my presentations to school, so it's good to have a whole session about that tonight. It's wonderful we have Cliff here. Buddy is also going to talk about the New Zealand Land Wars Museum. I have a piece of paper in front of me with its correct name, which is going to go across the road. If anyone knows where there's a spare 55 million, just see Buddy at the end of the session. We'd like to hear from you. So it's great to have a good number here again tonight. So I invite you to welcome Cliff as he begins the session.
And good evening, welcome. I see a few faces that look familiar from last week, so I'm glad to see you back, and other people as well. You're very welcome. So I'm Cliff Simons. I'm a military historian. I've been studying these wars for about 35 years, and teaching about them and writing about them. I'm also an army officer, so I've looked at them from a military perspective. And for the last 10 years or so, it was my pleasure to be able to go around these battlefields and take groups of New Zealand military personnel and other groups and walk around the battlefields and learn stories. So that's briefly my background. Buddy and I have worked together on numerous projects. We're both trustees of the museum that he's going to talk about later on. He's the project director. And we wrote the book together, Victory at Gate Pa. And he'll tell you a little bit about that later. It's actually just about to be reissued or republished. So I'm going to talk for about an hour about the Battle of Te Ranga. Given my background, I'm going to sort of have a fairly military-heavy sort of emphasis on the way that the battle went. But I hope to give you an overview of how the battle, why the battle took place, what happened, and then the aftermath of that. I called it an overlooked battle. I was trying to find the right word, and I spent quite a lot of time looking at synonyms to try and find a word. I'm not completely happy with overlooked, but it is a battle that is not talked about very much. And as John said, we often just tag it on at the end of other of talks about the Gate Pa. Is the finger down pressure on?
Johnson.
Oh, there it is. Thanks. So, Te Ranga is a battle that isn't well known. It's not as well known as this one, and I can't really tell you why. It's not as well known as the battle here at Gate Pa. In terms of the New Zealand wars, it had one of the highest death tolls of any of those colonial battles that took place during the New Zealand Wars period. Around about 170 people were killed in the Battle of Te Ranga. So it's up at a level similar to the Battle of Oraka. Those death tolls are a lot lower than the battles of the musket wars. For instance, the Battle at Aotearoa down here in the 1820s was over 600 people, and there are a lot of places around the country where there were more than 1,000 deaths. But for the 1860s period, this was one of the big battles in terms of death toll. It's a controversial battle, and I must say to you, I feel slightly uneasy talking about it because there are allegations that it was a massacre and sort of deception and things like that, so I'll cover some of that later. And it's also the last battle, if we think of the Waikato War spilling into Tauranga, it's the last battle in that series. So the Waikato War started in 1863, and this was 12 or 13 months later, and this brought that whole period to an end. So I'm going to go through very quickly some of what I talked about last week for those who weren't here. So you can see that by early 1864, the fighting in the Waikato had gotten to an area around Te Ranga. And this is in about January 1864. And that's actually very close to Tauranga. And Tauranga was an area where war supplies were being landed and taken over the Kaimais to the Maori army that was in the Waikato. And also men were coming through from the east coast, and they were crossing over from Tauranga into the Waikato. And some people actually gave Tauranga the name of the Port of Waikato. But I want to just emphasise to you, before we really get started, that war here in Tauranga did not start because of any problems that were developing here. If we look at Wellington or New Plymouth and the Taranaki War, they grew out of arguments over land and what land had been purchased and things like that. There was none of that here. In general, the populations, the Maori and Pākehā populations in Tauranga got on reasonably well. So it didn't grow out of tensions. In a way, the war came over the Kaimais and came to here. The Maori population is, I guess it's hard to know. I've said up to several thousand. I think probably 2,000 to 3,000, and three major iwi. This is a picture that was painted by Robley in 1865. So this is the year after the battles, and this is Matapihi. The Pākehā population was actually very small, probably about 50 people. Mainly the mission station, or several mission families, but there was also there were some traders and some farmers, and of course I must remember to mention that there was the Roman Catholic mission at the Aotearoa Pa. Now the key European personality, or Pākehā personality, was Archdeacon Brown, who had been here for a long time. He had been here about 25 years at this stage, and had established a very successful mission station. He had actually been in New Zealand since 1827, so he'd been here for all of his adult life. Now, why did the government take an interest in Tauranga? Well, some of the warriors from here had been involved in the fighting in Waikato since Mary in the late 1863. And at the moment, they were, when this, just before the troops arrived here, they were near the Cambridge area, preparing to defend a Pa in that area near Maungatautari, because the British were then coming up the Waikato River. So the government knew that some of the people here were supporters of Kingitanga and were fighting in the Waikato. And they knew that it was a harbour or a port for war supplies, and they knew, we'll use the word logistics, they knew it was part of the logistics system. They knew that there was a lot of food being grown here, and that was about to be taken over into the Waikato, and they knew that a lot of men had said that when the harvest was taken in, they would go across. And so, as well as arriving here and trying to stop that, they also wanted to give the local people here something to think about. If the troops arrived here, it's going to take their mind off going across and joining the war in Waikato. And so, in January the 21st, 1864, warships came through the heads. Troops jumped off, took over the vicinity of what we now know as the Elms, or the mission station, and set up a blockade of the harbour to stop all of those activities. And over the next few months, there were a number of battles that took place. The first one was in the Rotorua Lakes in this area here. Quite a large war party from the east coast, from the Aotearoa, were coming through, and they wanted to cut through the Rotorua Lakes area and get to Waikato, and they asked permission from Te Aotearoa, and Aotearoa were aligned to the Crown, so they were supporters of the government. Perhaps another way of phrasing that is that their aims coincided with the government's aims, and so it was a useful coalition. And they denied them access. The war party tried to get through, and there was a running battle here in March, April, in this area here. They were driven back to the coast, and then the British and the Te Aotearoa developed a very strong redoubt here at Makatu. Eventually, the East Coast Iwi attacked that redoubt, and there was a battle along this beach here, Aotearoa, and that all happened the week before the Battle of Gate Pa. So the effect of driving that Tairāwhiti or East Coast war party out of the area meant that this approach to Tauranga was now sealed off. And it's quite possible that this, some of these warriors would have actually turned up and fought at Gate Pa if they'd been able to, but they were cut off. So we had the Battle of Gate Pa on the 29th of April, and then 7 weeks later, the last battle in this campaign, which was the Battle of Te Ranga that we're talking about tonight. So the Battle of Te Ranga. That's a sign that used to be there on the old hedge, but that's all been removed now. So after the Battle of Pukehinahina-Gate Pa, the British built a really big redoubt on this site. It was actually capable of holding 400 men. It was a really significant redoubt. And then they marched out towards the Wairoa River and destroyed a major pa out there called the Putake Pa. They destroyed and burnt that. And then there was another pa nearer to Te Puna, and that was burnt as well. And the plan was to build a redoubt on that site. Now, a redoubt is a dirt fort, or an earthen fort. So, and then a new redoubt was established at Judea. So we know where the Judea Marae is on near Churchill Road. So a new redoubt was established there as well. So what the policy was to consolidate what the government now had, and to try and protect it from attack from Maori from the outside. So I've categorised this as an aggressive stance. They were taking the battle out and they were expanding their sphere of influence. At the same time, there was actually an attempt to broker peace. Some of the neutral chiefs and Mr. Smith, the civil commissioner, the leading government agent in the area, attempted to broker peace, but nothing came of that. But things changed during mid-May. On the 16th of May, General Cameron was called away because his troops were needed in Napier and Whanganui. Tensions were rising there, and he was asked to take his, or he was told to take his troops down there. 1,200 of them left. And that left Colonel Greer back here in Tauranga with 900 men. So he had to change the way he thought about what was going on. He had 500 men at Te Papa, which is down at the mission station, 150 men here on this site, 150 men still up at Makatu guarding that approach to Tauranga, and 100 at Judea. So he had 900, but he had to spread them across those 4 different sites. And so that aggressive stance that they had when they had enough men has now changed, and now the government is just going to sit. It's just going to sit and control those 4 sites and just see what happens. So I'm saying it was more of a passive defence or a passive stance. Here's what Gate Pa looked like at the time. So if you can remember that the pa itself, when you looked up at the pa, it was almost indistinguishable from the horizon. There was just a flimsy fence across the ground, and most of the pa was actually underground. Now some people think that this is actually what the pa looks like, but it's not. This is the large redoubt that was built on that site almost immediately. And you can see that it sticks right up above the ground, and it was made of sandbags. And this could apparently hold 400 men. And you can see the buildings there. The buildings would have been maybe officers' quarters, but certainly there would have been a contractor there who was responsible. He would have got the contract for supplying food and beer to the troops. And so that would have been part of his organisation there as well. Here's another look at it, just to put a bit of colour and a slightly different angle, so you can see what it looked like at the time. Across New Zealand, some of our small towns actually grew out of redoubts like this. Taupo is one of those. Now, the book that Buddy and I wrote is called Victory at Gate Pa ? And the question mark really is meant to say, okay, Maori won that first battle, but could they continue to fight? Could they win the campaign? Was it in fact, did they actually suffer so many casualties in this battle of Gate Pa that they were unable to campaign any further? And it seems to be the case that they took so many casualties, both wounded and killed, that they really didn't have enough people to mount another attack against the British troops. But there seems to have been a large number of other warriors in the area. You can see the point I've got there at the bottom. The people who fought at Te Ranga, the 500 who fought at Te Ranga, were mainly from out of this district. They were from the east coast, and some were from the Rotorua area, and they were asked to come and join the fighting. There would have been a large number of warriors who had been in the Waikato, who had come out, who were still wanting to take the fight to the British, and there were groups that had come from the east coast that maybe hadn't even gotten the chance to fight yet. There were some who had come down from the Hauraki area, and they wanted to get in. Everyone wanted to have another go at the soldiers. And so quite a complex plan was developed. You remember that the battle plan that Rawa Puhiraki had here at Gate Pa for the Battle of Gate Pa was to draw the British out, to attack them, inflict as many casualties as he could, and then possibly then have the opportunity to attack the military camp down at Camp Te Papa. So this is a variation of that, but it's more complex. So the plan was to build another pa, have the British come out and attack it, and then simultaneously attack some of those other British positions. Definitely the Gate Pa position, the Judea position, and possibly mount an attack on the Camp Te Papa position at the same time. So it's quite a complex plan, and it's going to need a lot of men to do that. Now, information began to trickle into Colonel Greer and the British command down at Camp Te Papa that there was a battle, that there was a plan afoot to attack the British positions. And this information came in from a variety of sources. There were some Maori living around the Te Papa Peninsula who the British described as friendlies, who were giving information about what was planned. And there were also government officers in Rotorua, in Makatu, and here in Tauranga who started to hear stories that other iwi or other papu had been invited to come into the Tauranga area to fight against the British. And there started to be rumours. At one stage there was a rumour that 600 Waikatos were on their way, and other times there were other rumours. So the British started to get ready, started to prepare, and started to think about the fact that they may be going to be under attack. And to counteract this, they started patrolling. Now, patrolling is when you go out into the countryside looking to see what's going on. And before he left, General Cameron had said to Colonel Greer that he should patrol extensively across the country and across the area and try and detect any activity as soon as it started to happen. Now, one of the things, and the idea would be to attack any new part immediately, to not allow it to get developed. From a military point of view, the mistake that the British made here was that they watched Maori build a very strong part for nearly 3 weeks. And then when they attacked it, it was too strong. And so now they are saying to themselves, we will patrol the neighbourhood, and when we see something start, we're going to attack straight away. Now, to help with that, the New Zealand Defence Force cavalry had arrived. Now, cavalry are soldiers on horseback, and they can ride much longer distances, of course, than soldiers on their feet. And the cavalry, one of the things we say about the cavalry is it is the eyes and ears of the army. So their job was to go out and scan the area and look for any activity. And at the same time, another unit arrived, and that was the Waikato militia. And the Waikato militia weren't regular soldiers like the British troops. They had been recruited to fight in the Waikato War. They were farmers and adventurers and bushmen and miners, guys who were used to doing it tough and rough. But the promise to them was that they would get some land when the war was over. So a lot of them are fighting for the possibility of farming. So it's quite significant that they are here also, because that indicates that the government intended to settle on the land and to break it up into farms for these guys. Now, on the afternoon of the 20th of June, Maori was seen moving from the Waimapu River, so that's the river that goes up near Oropi, across towards Te Ranga, up near Pais Pa. And Te Ranga is, and that was about 3 or 4 kilometres. And there was a large number of Maori, and they were carrying war supplies, they were carrying equipment, they were carrying some prefabricated wooden structures and things like that. They had gone up the river as far as they could in canoes, and then they were going across country to Te Ranga. Now, the cavalry was ranging out every day, and they were going up to 12 miles out to see what was happening, and they just so happened to see them. So they stopped, they watched. It was a 4-man cavalry patrol. They watched what was happening, and they made the assumption that they were going to Te Ranga or somewhere there, and went back and told their commanders back in Camp Te Papa. And the next morning, Colonel Greer was so confident about this information that he actually marched out with just over 600 men and a field gun just after at 8:30 in the morning. So he believed this information. This is what he had been waiting to see. Now this is Te Ranga. Just in case you're not aware of it, this is Pais Pa Road. This is Joyce Road. And this is Thomas Aquinas College, just here. So this is about 2.5 kilometres up Pais Pa Road. Now, I just lifted this off the internet, so this blue line is probably the reserve, but the battlefield actually extended across here. This was a cart road that took you right towards Rotorua, quite a long way. So the Maori warriors, at least 500, had come from over this area here. They'd made their way in the late afternoon, and they'd spent the whole night digging. And they would have been digging frantically because they knew that the British were out patrolling, and they would have wanted to have been down deep enough and far enough so that they could defend themselves the next morning. Same thing happened when they established this place here at Gate Pa. So they're digging in this area here. There are women there as well as men. On the morning of the 21st, the British troops left Camp Te Papa at 8:30. By about 9:30, they were going past this place here, and by about 10:30 they were in this vicinity, probably somewhere around Barks Corner, if we all know what that is. Now there were Maori sentries out that far, and they saw the British coming, the cavalry were in front, and they fired their muskets to give the defenders early warning. So they knew that they were coming at that point. And Putake, who was in command, or someone, sent Maori skirmishers out to meet them. Now skirmishers are men who their job would be to fire at them and just slow them down as much as they could. But eventually the British arrived, and by about 10:30, Lieutenant Colonel Greer has arrived in this area here, and he sees what he had been hoping to see. He sees a large number of Maori digging a pa. This is exactly what he imagined. And he sent a rider back to Camp Te Papa to bring up the rest of the men that he had, another 200 plus a field gun. So he now has nearly 850 men. But that's going to take them a while to arrive. So they're going to come this way. Now, there's a hill here just opposite Aquinas College, just opposite the entrance. He put the 6-pound gun on that hill there, and he spread his men out across this area here. And they started to fire their muskets at the defenders who were in this area. And this would have stopped them being able to dig, because you can't dig your trenches when you're being fired at. And the 6-pound Armstrong gun would have been firing at them as well. And it would have been like a large shotgun going off. It would have been actually terrifying, and it was firing shrapnel, so it would have been slicing through bodies. It would have been really quite nasty. And so these people here, a lot of them actually decided, there wasn't enough cover. Perhaps some of them decided, I'm not going to die here today, and they disappeared over into the dead ground. But a number of them remained in the pits. A number of them would have had enough cover to remain in the pits. We just have a look here. This is a battle plan of the way it looked. So this is the rifle pits here that they were digging. You can see very steep land on either side. It drops away quite steeply all around here. There's the 6-pound gun that was put up there. And these are skirmishers. So as Colonel Greer got established, he threw a group of men across. And if I go back, can you see a slight ridge across here? I think that's probably where they were. He would have put a row of men there, and their job would have been to fire at the Maori warriors and keep their head down. And he also put a group around the side here. So they came right around here, and they were in this area, and they were able to fire up onto the men in the trenches as well. So in a lot of ways, this position was almost surrounded at this stage. So there were 500 defenders. I talked about the skirmishers and sentries. There was also another group coming from the east, a group of about 500 from the Thames area were in the area. And this may have been the group that was going to attack the Gate Pa position. And they would have heard the firing, and they would have doubled back and come back. And they were yelling out and firing their muskets and coming across from the Oropi area towards Pais Pa, or towards Te Ranga. And Colonel Greer, right through this period of time, was watching them and trying to see what they were up to. And Colonel Greer was actually able, because he had seized the initiative and he had caught the Maori defenders by surprise, he was able to control the way the battle went. Here's another way of looking at it. I'll go over this side this time. This is a very poor painting, but it does actually show. So there are the trenches there. There's the men in the trenches, or men and some women in the trenches. Here are the skirmishers firing at them across here. Here's the 6-pound gun up here. Here's one group of, in the end, the 43rd Regiment was here, a couple of companies, and the 68th were over here. So you can see that it was a very flat, open battle site. And the disadvantage for the Maori was that it was easy to shoot at them. In Gate Pa here, if you remember, Gate Pa was higher than the guns, and you couldn't see into the pa. You didn't know what was here. Here, they were in a position where they were actually very vulnerable. So they were caught in the open, and they didn't have enough protection, and they didn't have time to put that plan into effect, that plan where they were going to have a coordinated attack. So they were pinned down, and some of them leave. Now, I just want to compare British and Maori, what we call command and coordination. Within a British military group like this that was fighting there, everyone knew who was in charge, and it was a hierarchical structure. And they knew that if this person told you to do something, you went and did it, otherwise you were going to be punished. And it was very easy for Colonel Greer and the majors under him to control their troops and to tell them where to go on the battlefield. For the Maori here, I think that was very difficult because you had a whole bunch of different groups of people who have turned up on the day. Some of them have come from far away, some of them are local. They, in a sense, some of them are really just family groups or whānau groups that have come. You know, there's dad and there's his brothers and there's a couple of cousins and they've come and they're going to fight. But how do you coordinate all of those people? How do you command them? How do you tell those people you're going to do this? Because they may or may not do that. They may or may not want to fight here and die here today. And the same for this group that is coming from over the fields. There's no way of signalling to them to tell them how to do things. Nowadays we would use telephones and radios and things like that. In those days there was no way to coordinate on the battlefield. And so I think Rawiri Pukehinahina-Gate Pa, who was in command of the Maori there, would have had great difficulty marshalling his men and organising a defence. Everything was just happening far too quickly for him. So by 12, I'll go back actually, just here. By 1230, the extra 200 men had arrived from Te Papa, and the group from over here was getting closer and closer, and Colonel Greer was trying to just sort of coordinate everything. His two majors, Major Shuttleworth and Major Colville from the 68th and the 58th, they were shouting at him, "It's time to go, it's time to go." And the men were shouting, "Come on, let's go, let's go." But Greer was saying, "No, wait," and he was watching this group coming closer, and he was waiting for the reinforcements to arrive. And as soon as he knew the reinforcements had arrived, he declared that they charged. And so the charge took place probably from somewhere about here onto the trenches in this area here. And some of you might remember that at Gate Pa here, there was a very unusual formation of troops that came in. They were 4 wide and 75 deep, remember? And they snaked their way up the hill. And they got caught in a bottleneck as they came into the pa. Here, they have a very wide frontage, so the troops can just charge and they can all hit the Maori defenders at the same time. So they attacked on a wide frontage. The warriors were in the trenches, were in their pits, and they would have been down low and they would have been trying to fire over the top, keeping their heads down, perhaps even firing like this. And they're using shotguns with two barrels, so they can fire off 2. But as soon as they've fired those, they can't do anything more. They have to reload with the ramrods, so they haven't got time. The British had been told just to attack in what they call light order, so they didn't have their packs, they just had their rifles with a musket and a bit of stuff around their belt. And they were told not to fire until they got into the trenches. But the distance they charged was probably about 60 metres, because they had a formula that they would use. They knew if Maori fired them, they would need a certain period of time to reload, so they could cover 60 metres or something like that before they reloaded. So a number of the soldiers were killed as they charged, but very quickly they had got into the trenches. And it would have been a very ferocious, brutal battle. And it was all over very, very quickly. You can see this This is just a fanciful drawing, I guess, but it gives a bit of a feel for it. There's someone there being bayoneted. And that was the way a large number of the Maori were killed, is that they were bayoneted, which is a particularly horrible way to go. And about 68 Maori were killed in and around the trenches perhaps within a minute, very, very quickly. They fought back strongly. They had their muskets, they had mainly tomahawks or mere and clubs, but it was a very brutal confrontation, and it just happened very, very quickly. But one thing I want to say about the resistance is it's a little bit unusual to face a bayonet charge and not flinch. I have heard one figure that only 2% of groups will face a bayonet charge. Well, in this case, several of the British officers wrote that the Maori warriors stood up and they didn't leave their ground, and they took it. And the bayonet charge went straight into them, and they didn't flinch. And it was a very brave act, I think, to actually withstand that charge. And then the pursuit took place. Some were pursued down over the back of the position, and the infantry chased them, and several more, quite a number more were shot. And apparently the cavalry pursued people for up to 7 miles, whether that was the case or not, but they pursued them for further. And another little interesting thing that was commented on by several of the officers is they were surprised that some of the warriors refused to run. They deigned not to run. They just stood up and walked away slowly, some with their heads bowed. They were shot, but they were not going to run. And Greer and Roden both commented on that in their diaries. Now, when this had all finished, very quickly, there were a number of wounded and a number of prisoners taken. About 47 were taken as prisoners, and most of them were wounded. Some had tried to fight rearguard actions and sort of get in the bush and fire and so on. They were shot, but there were quite a number that were wounded. And they were taken back to Camp Te Papa and given medical care. There are stories that families were killed there, and some of the local stories. Ngā Tamarwaho talk about families being killed. I've only come across information about 2 women fighting, and several women fighting, but 2 women being taken prisoner, and they were both taken back to Camp Te Papa, fed, treated properly, and released the next day. Quite a number of the prisoners were treated. Some had amputations. Some were taken back to Auckland for medical care. So I think that wasn't too bad. As far as Colonel Greer goes, he had already received information that the camp was possibly under attack. So he was out at Te Ranga with most of his men, and the camp is potentially under attack. He knew that the low tide was at 3:30, and if the attack was going to come, it was possibly across the ford. There was a ford from the Judea side of the Waikato estuary across to the mission station. And so he made sure that he went back ahead of the men. He took a force back with him to be back in the camp by 2:30. He also sent instructions back for the Navy to come off their ships to protect the camp, and the Navy actually put men up the masts of the warships to see if there was anything happening. And it was later reported that indeed there was a party that was preparing to go come down and attack the camp, but when they heard that of the defeat at Te Ranga, they turned around and went back. Now, I've got a picture of some handsome men here. I don't mind, I hope this is okay to use. It was in the Herald, so it's in the public domain, but there's some fine looking gentlemen there, and I see 2 of them here at the moment. And our dear old friend Perry in the middle there. So I just still think this is an appropriate photograph. So the total Maori casualties are probably about 150, 151. Debbie Macaulay has come up with that figure, and we don't know how many were wounded. The British had 13 killed, 39 wounded, which is quite significant, and there were 2 more Victoria Crosses. So remember I said last week there were 15 Victoria Crosses in the whole New Zealand Wars campaign. 4 of them are here in Tauranga. The 2 here were for rescuing people off the battlefield. These 2 were for combat in the trenches. But that's not something that is particularly talked about very much. The following day, the burials took place. So during the night, 107 Maori bodies were collected up and laid out in 3 rows at Te Ranga, and the next morning another one was found, so that made 108. There was some Maori came up and sat with the bodies overnight. The 43rd Regiment was there as well. And the next morning, on a terrible day, a terrible wet, windy day, Archdeacon Brown buried the 108 people in the trenches that they had dug the day before, or in pits they had dug the day before. 13 soldiers were buried down in the Mission Station Cemetery alongside their friends who had died at Gate Pa here, and some of the Maori who died from their injuries who were down in the camp were also buried in the Mission Station. There's a monument in the Mission Cemetery which is really quite interesting, and it's the story. It's a monument to Rawiri Pukehinahina, who was the commander of the Maori forces both here at Gate Pa and at Te Ranga, and Aotearoa, who was the man who wrote those rules of engagement. Both were killed in the trenches at Te Ranga. And on Tauratawa's body was found the information about the rules of the engagement, and if an enemy hunger feed him, that story was on him. Both of those were Christian men. Tauratawa had actually, was very involved and was really employed as a Christian catechist or a sort of an unordained priest. And he knew the mission families very well. Rawiri Pukehinahina knew Archdeacon Brown very well. Remember I said that they all got on okay before these wars. But in 1870, Rawiri Pukehinahina's body was dug up. They knew where he was. I've heard 2 versions of this. Someone might have another version. One is that he was the only one wrapped in a blanket. The other one is that he had been placed across the bodies of the men, so they knew which one he was. Archdeacon Brown had known where he was buried as well. But he was brought back and buried in the Mission Cemetery as a mark of respect to him. And then in 1914, the 50th anniversary of the battle, this large granite monument was unveiled to him, and it tells his story on the front of it, and it shows him calling on someone, probably Aotearoa, to bring water to the dying Colonel Booth at Gate Pa. That's what that picture is at the bottom. And this monument also had on the side, it talks about Aotearoa. When this was unveiled, it was said that 1,000 people from the township and Maori and Pakeha came to pay their respects. Now, we've got a little bit of a recent update. One of the things we've never really known is where the trenches were at Gate Pa. At Te Ranga. You can see that the diagram that I showed you earlier showed them as a straight line across here. But in actual fact, just a few years ago, there was a ground radar survey done, and that shows us some of the rifle pits. And so you can see that they're on a curve. And indeed, some of the British accounts at the time said that they were curved, about 200 metres. I think Archdeacon Brown said there were 44 pits. And so that's where they were buried, and that's where the bodies are. This here is an interesting one. It shows, the thing that particularly shows up is iron. So these pink, everything pink is Fe, is iron. And so this shows, this will be cannonballs and large pieces of shrapnel and things like that all through here. And you can see once again, you can see the rifle pits, and you can see an extrapolation of where the trenches actually went right across Pies Pa Road and into the orchard over there. Now it's an interesting thing that when a water main was put up Pies Pa Road a few years ago for the Lakes subdivision, they put it up the side of Pies Pa Road, so they had to have archaeologists on site to see whether any human remains were discovered. And actually, as far as I know, none were. We know that those bodies will be there, but the water main came up here, but it just must have missed them. And on this side, some of you will know there's a wooden boardwalk. For archaeological reasons, you can't go down into the ground. So along here, the footpath is actually a wooden boardwalk. What saddens me is that the drivers who are driving across, up and down Pies Pa every day, are actually driving through there and across bodies and not even aware that they are there. So on the 25th of July, there was a surrender peacemaking ceremony, and there was another one in early August. Te Ranga and the warriors who were there handed in some old weapons, but essentially said that they wanted the war to come to an end. And the government wanted the war to come to an end as well. And Governor Gray came in August, and he said that he would... remember, I talked last week about the Act, the New Zealand Settlements Act, which meant that the government was going to confiscate land of tribes that are deemed to be in rebellion. Governor Gray said that he was going to confiscate the land, but because of the way that Maori had reacted and behaved towards the British soldiers here, and that's written on the monuments as well, that they didn't mutilate them or torture them, that he would return 3/4 of it. So the original confiscation was 290 or 291,000 acres. That's the green and pink. But eventually 240,000 was returned. But it wasn't necessarily returned to the owners of that land. And it was given to other people, other Maori, who sold it almost immediately and made a good profit out of it. Now, I'm not going to go any further than that because there are people here who know that story a lot better than I do. But it was very sad, and what it really meant was that the people who lost most of the land were the Ngaitama Waho hapu, who virtually were made landless as a result of this. Just to orientate you, that circle there, can you see the little orange piece? That's the Te Papa Peninsula. So we're here, just inside that piece. So that's the Anglican mission, which eventually the Crown took most of as well. And the piece of land that was eventually confiscated between the Waimapu and Wairau rivers is this purple piece here, or whatever colour that is. And that is the land that most of Tauranga is built on. So that was all confiscated. And these were forts that were redoubts that were fought, that were built to enforce that confiscation. Now, John talked last week about how quite a few street names in this area are after the Battle of Gate Pa. Well, in the new suburb of the Lakes, there are some new street names, and they relate to the Battle of Te Ranga. But firstly, I'll just talk about Pies Pa Road. Captain Charles Pye was the commander of the cavalry, and he had a Victoria Cross, by the way, from India. But he was the commander of the cavalry, and when the confiscations took place, there was a line that was drawn, and there was a stockade, wooden stockade built just on the site of the Pies Pa Primary School, just to the south of that. And that became known as Pies Pa. And so the road up to that became known as Pies Pa Road. And the whole suburb now is known as Pies Pa. It's named after Major Captain Charles Pye. The main road through the Lakes subdivision, the more recent part of it, is Te Ranga Memorial Drive, which is, I think, quite nice. And then you can see some of the names that relate to the battle or to the general war, such as Matipu and Pakanga, that are commemorating the battle. And even Robley. Robley was the British officer who was responsible for a lot of the paintings and had married into one of the Maori families. So, I'm just going to leave that there and say, are there any questions or points that people want to make?
Could you comment on the choice of site of Te Ranga?
Oh, okay. So the question is, could I comment on the choice of the site for Te Ranga? So it wasn't a very good site. The way that, by this stage of Maori warfare, they were choosing sites that either had water or steep drops on either side, and they channeled the attacker to a certain point. And so, if we look at places like Rangiriri and various other sites, they're like that. This site did that. It was steep on both sides, and it channeled the attackers, it channeled the British to come to the trenches. But it was a very small site. But its biggest disadvantage was that it was flat. And so the British soldiers could see it quite clearly, and the gunners could aim into it. And so it wasn't a very good site. The Chief Horinatai wrote in one of his memoirs that they weren't happy with the site because it had been chosen by someone else and they just had to stick with it. But yeah, the site was actually not a very good one. Any other questions?
Did the woman and children escape on the side of the building on the right?
People escaped over the back and down into the gullies. It's very deceptive country down there, so people would have escaped over the back.
Did they let the woman and children go?
I don't have any information on that. I don't know enough about that. The question was, were the women and children allowed to go? We know that some women, 2 women at least, were captured. I don't have a lot of other information on that, apart from acknowledging that the local stories are that women and children were killed.
I'm fairly new to Aotearoa, and for some time I've been bewildered, given the scale of the confiscations, why there's not more animosity.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Anybody can do it. Any other final comments? Mary Rice.
More recently, there's been a large poem on Te Ranga.
Yes.
Can you comment on the present status of that land?
Well, I'll get Buddy to do that. So the question was, up until recently, there's been a large pole on the site, but that just rotted and fell down. It only lasted a few years. So the question is the status, but Buddy will talk about that in the next one.
It's a car they're not listening to advice to use treated timber. And it's been buried in the bund that's there. You know, there's a bund alongside of the road. It's in there.
Okay, one more. Yes.
You mentioned that, excuse me, you mentioned last week you've got another book
Oh.
in process. When can we expect to get that? What the first one? Not only the follow-up one.
So the question was about another book in process. Yes, I've written another book.
Yeah. That's the one.
Yeah, well, you could talk to me later.
Do that.
But Buddy, we've got the book that we produced in 2019 is being reissued next week, so that's coming out.
Right.
Last question, Buddy.
I'm just wondering if you know anything about Archdeacon Brownfeld, who was a man living in Te Ranga who had befriended the Maori and was indeed cultivating them spiritually, I believe. What did he feel? How did he remain neutral in these situations with the wars?
So the question is, how did Archdeacon Brown feel about this? So Archdeacon Brown had come here to bring Christianity and had been quite successful at that, and had converted a large number of local people to Christianity. I think he loved the community, and the missionaries tended to be caught as meat in the sandwich, and this is repeated all around the North Island in this situation. He had buried nearly 200 men at the end of this campaign. His flock, Maori who he had known all their lives in some cases, and also his countrymen. So I think it broke him, to be honest. I think it destroyed his life's work, and he was very upset. But he wrote a letter to Governor Gray about a week after this battle, and he warned Gray that this could carry on, and that the government had to be very careful, and it had to make provision for the widows and the orphans, and it had to sue for peace. Right, well, I'm going to leave it there. Maybe if we have a quick stretch, and then we'll... Thanks very much. Welcome and thank you for coming along tonight. It's wonderful to see so many people taking interest in our history, so good for you. So what I want to talk about is, we've got this amazing history, what are we going to do with it? And so going back to 1964, when I was in the third form at Aotearoa College, we came across here to the 100th anniversary of the battle, and that's kind of when my love affair with this whole thing started. We had a very enthusiastic history teacher, John Buckland, who some of you might know, amazing teacher who had this approach to history, which was go there history, right? So what his method was, you learned everything you could in the classroom about it, and then you actually went there and tried to match what you knew was there now. And so that's exactly what he did with us here at Pukehinahina-Gate Pa. So as a result of the 150th commemorations in 2014, some of you may have been here then and been a part of those commemorations, it became obvious to some of us that we needed something more permanent than just having a little remembrance once a year or something like that. This is a story that's well worth talking about and one well worth telling. And we have a sample of what that could be like of some of you might remember the Gate Pa exhibition put up by the Gate Pa Trust. You see Chair Terry Lawyers here tonight. And that was down the road in the Greerton Community Hall. Later on moved into town. And so just looking at the amazing success of that exhibition, really obvious to me that, this is something we need to do something about. So the trust that we set up to run the 2014 commemorations, the Pukehinahina Charitable Trust, so we've set ourselves the task of doing that, and still to be confirmed, but the name we're looking at for this is the Putake O Te Riri, which means the reasons behind the anger, or the reasons for the war, basically. And so it'll be the New Zealand War Centre. The intention is that it talks about all the wars in New Zealand from that period, but with a special focus, of course, on what happened here in Tauranga at Pukehinahina and at Te Ranga. You saw one example of cliff head at Pukehinahina. So this is another artist's view. This is one of the exhibits at the Gate Pa Trust exhibit. I personally think the hill's a bit too steep. Certainly when you look at it today, nowhere near that. Yeah, so this is that 100th commemoration that I was talking about. One of the school kids at the back in the grey uniform. And as I was saying, this is what started me on this journey. I can't remember much about what was said that day. The great thing for us schoolboys watching was that one of the sailors in the honour guard fainted and just missed his bucket. So I think that was our talking point on the bus home, what was actually said. But in 2014, when we had the 150th commemoration, different story. It almost was a year, over the whole year, that we had various things happening. The idea was to try and involve the community as much as possible, and especially to involve our young people. So we had essay competitions, speech competitions, poetry competitions, art competitions, various people coming to talk about things. We had a Last Supper dinner. We call it the Last Supper dinner because some of you might know on the night before the battle, Archdeacon Brown invited all the officers to come to the Elms and have dinner and share communion. So the team who came the next day night were dead. So that's why we call it the Last Supper dinner. So we commemorate that dinner. We had the Governor General come, of course, and just an amazing day all around. I don't know if Cliff has commented on this before, but one of the things, once the battle was over, the thing to do was to show who's boss by putting a rope right through the middle of the park. And you can see that at Rangariri, over on the other side, at Orako it's the same, and exactly here at Gate Pa. For those of you who know Cameron Road out here, you might think that this is on, the trees are on this side, but actually they're on the other side. So that shows you how much fill was removed in order to build that flat ground over there that had the bowling club and the tennis club on it now. So, this is what we're looking at for our new building. Two-story with a basement. In the basement, workshop and a place to put exhibits together. On the ground floor, exhibits of course. On the top floor, more exhibits. And the space that we can, you can adjust so you can have conferences and meetings and that kind of thing up there. Hope to put on a full commercial kitchen so you can cater to events like that. We also have a research space so that people who are interested in the subject can come and access our library holdings and that kind of thing. One of the reasons behind making it something that I talk about all in New Zealand is that way it becomes a national institution which qualifies us for more funding support probably. So these renders have been produced by our architects on first principles. So the idea is that you come off Cameron Road, a bus can swing under there, drop their passengers, and then go and park and people can come and enjoy what we're going to be able to offer. So this is another view of that. We're having a devil of a battle at the moment with the council. The council has got an intensification of the city plan, and they see the Gate Pa area as being central to that whole plan. And so what they're saying is that they want the ability to erect buildings up to 26 metres high, which means that the view from our site across the road here to Wawa will be lost. Right? We have a big apartment building over there. So we're saying, this is the most important cultural site in the city, for goodness sake. What are you talking about? So anyway, submissions are coming up, and somebody was talking before about animosity. Yeah, well, there's some animosity there. I will be having a deep and serious discussion with council planners about that.
Have you got a petition process this side?
No, I haven't, sorry.
You should start doing it on your talk.
Just clap on the sidelines, that's all good. Yes, a big balcony out the front so you can enjoy that view, of course. They were suggesting to us we should ask the tennis club to move. I said, the tennis club has got the highest number of junior players in the city. I don't think it would be a good thing to do that. So the tennis club's going to stay. You can see a blurred image there. Just there. So this is Ian Taylor's idea. Some of you might know Ian. He's got a company called Animated Research Limited. And every time you watch the golf on TV and you see the ball goes, that's Ian's company doing that, right? He also does the America's Cup racing, so you can see the boats. That's Ian. So we were having a talk about security. And he said to me, oh, don't worry, we'll just get some animated warriors across the front every night. So taking that a little bit further, Ian's next suggestion is and this comes out of I don't know why, but I was in Paris and I was going past some of the fashion houses, and instead of having mannequins with the clothes on, they actually have these virtual figures, you know, walking around and showing how the garment sits and moves. I said, oh, that's amazing. So I was telling Ian about it. Oh, we can do that. So, you know, we'll just have a warrior and a soldier at the front door, and they'll walk up and say, sure, come in. So, yeah, he's very excited about this project. One of the other things I'd like to do is to have exhibits that are a bit different, right? I've just come back from a tour of the southern states of America, because the American Civil War was going on at the same time that Gate Pa and Te Ranga was happening. So I wanted to go across there and see how they commemorated those events. Yeah, pretty underwhelming, to be honest. And I think we already do it better in this country, as I'll demonstrate shortly. But one of the things I noticed about every one of these institutions is that in the foyer, and it's the same here in New Zealand too, in the foyer there's always some big object. And so I thought, well, why don't we get one of these made? This is a 110-pound Armstrong gun, which was the biggest gun they had in the artillery battery here at Pukehinahina. This one's a naval one, I think, because it's on a carriage like that. But I talked to the guys at Western Studios. Yeah, we can make one of those, buddy. No worries. So something like this, standing in the foyer would be good. And full fools at having a large object to immediately grab your attention when you walk in the door. So I think, how many of you have seen the Gallipoli exhibition? Isn't it amazing? Yeah, so when I was telling my American friends about this, they go, oh, wow. But then when they learned about the link to Peter Jackson, everybody realised, you know, why. And so I've just finished another project, which is the New Zealand Liberation Museum in Mikaere, northern France. Mikaere is a little town which was the last town to be liberated by the New Zealand division in World War I. And going there is amazing. As soon as they find out you're from New Zealand, you're not English. And so we got amazing support from the town in building our museum over there. And of course we had studios involved, and they built this giant figure of an exhausted soldier. He's got into the town. The town people have gone crazy, welcoming them, and they've all rushed up and put flowers, little buttonholes in them, so he's sitting down with his little buttonhole decoration. There's something here related to the capsules that I was just talking to. Okay, so one of the stories, I'll just try to rest slightly here, folks. One of the stories we've captured in our museum in the Kenmare is a story of a man called Winiata Tapsell, belonging to the Tapsell whānau who come from Maketu. And their ancestor, of course, was Hans Bock, Takihama Tapsell. Winiata was with the Māori Pioneer Battalion. They were outside the town of Mikaere, just got tired of digging ditches and stuff like that. So he joined up with the Canterbury Rifle Brigade, went up to the front line with them, got tired of doing that as well. So found a board, the Kenmare's an old medieval town, so it's still got the high walls and the moats around it. But anyway, he found the board, got across the moat, found a hole in the wall, got his mate to chuck his rifle over, found a hole in the wall, went into the town, shot a few Germans, saw where they all were, how they were laid out, got all the information, came back, and this is what makes the story true for me. On the way back, grabbed a few chickens for the boys. So, of course, when he got back, he was arrested for being absent from his post, had to do field punishment. Meanwhile, some other soldiers, I think he was the son of the Bishop of Canterbury at the time. Anyway, one of them, Lieutenant Abel, he found a way, they got into the town. The Germans realised the game was up, they surrendered. So poor old Winiata, meanwhile he's in jail. He actually should be the creditor of the first one into the town, and that's the story that has been told in the Liberation Museum now. If you get the opportunity to go there, I do recommend it.
More importantly, did he get any of the chicken?
I hope so. Well, it gets better. So afterwards, there were some Arab boys and they were throwing grenades into the moat, and the officers thought they were just getting a little explosives, right? But no, they were bombing the fish. So, if you go to the Kenmare, please go to the museum. You'll love it. It's a great piece of New Zealand stuck in the middle of France. Make sure to tell them you're a Kiwi. The exhibits in the new, there are a couple of stories that we really must have, and one of them, of course, is the story behind Romans 12:20. You find him who hung out, feed him, if he thirst, give him drink. And so that was the instruction followed during the night, and we've got all these wounded British soldiers lying around the battlefield. And we know it's a fact because Colonel Booth, who was one of the officers that had been shot, survived long enough to tell the story about a Māori person coming and giving them water. We should have this guy's story, Putake, who was the engineer for Gate Pa. He's got an interesting background. So in the 1820s, he was taken from here during one of the Ngāpuhi raids, came down here to Hawaii, him and a couple of other children, really, from some of the chiefly families here in Te Ranga. So he was up there when the Northerners started in the 1840s, not long after the signing of the treaty. And one of those battles was at a place called Ruapekapeka, the Bat's Nest. And that's where Māori first came up against an artillery barrage. And so they learned very quickly how to cope with that by digging deep bomb-proof shelters, deep trenches, that kind of thing. And so when the Ngāpuhi professed Christianity, released all these slaves, he came back to Tonga, but importantly, he brought all that knowledge and information back with him. So we'd love to tell his story. We'd love to tell the story of this lady too. Hini Te Kiri Karamu, also known as Jane Bobby, or Hini Pore. Yeah, there's a little dispute which I'm not going to resolve because at the end of the day, who cares? But she claimed for herself the role of giving the water. Because Ruth didn't actually say whether it was male or female. Anyway, if you ever get to read her story, she's a great old girl. She had an interesting life. I think she got the name Paul because she ended up marrying the guy who set up the pub at Makatū, an Irishman. And just such a fine face, isn't it? Oh, lovely. And so you know there's a little memorial to her just down the steps here where there's a little spring and a pond. The other thing that we'd like to do, so this is Robley, who was the artist who we know a lot about what happened to them because of the sketches that he left behind, not to mention the children over at Murphy. Cliff was kind enough to say he got married. I don't think that was part of it. Anyway, you'll see in the top part here. So this is the main part, and then there's a little, a smaller fortification just down the hill from it, right? And so when we ran the ground penetrating radar over the site, we found that little fortification is still there. It's buried underneath the asphalt of the car park across here. So the idea is that, and I've just started a discussion with Heritage New Zealand now, that we'd like to excavate that and make it one of the exhibits, so you can actually walk down into part of the actual trenches and fortifications, right? If they say no to that, my backup one is, okay, we'll put a glass floor over the top of it then, so you can, look at it. But, yeah. I'm just said to John, we should start counting how many people we put through tours up here and at Te Ranga every year. And it's just growing exponentially. And schools in particular, I don't know whether the teachers see this as an easy day for them. Just about the kids and us. Yeah, it's all good. But the interesting thing that I'm noticing is that new businesses and people coming to Tauranga want to know about this stuff. And so this is all the staff and all the specialists from Grace Orthopedic Hospital, having their little tiki tour around. Usually I'll start them off at Aotearoa Pa because when we go there, it's a good example of a pre-1860 park, I suppose. I'm not quite sure of the date on that, but start there. Who's that textual person here? So we had a documentary crew out here from Danish TV, and they wanted to go to some of the places where Hans capsule had been. So I took them to Aotearoa Pa, so you can see the great view you get from there, up the channel or straight across to Moa and the channel there. Explains what a great place it is, blah, blah, blah. And they said, well, why are we here? So I said, well, in the 1820s there was a battle raging here, Ngāpui and the Tauranga tribes. And by this time they've got arms parity. Tauranga tribes have got muskets too. So it's really just taking pot shots at each other. Tapsell sails in on his little schooner at half time more or less and starts selling ammunition to both sides. So they thought, that's a great idea. We could get Johnny Depp to play. He said, no, I think he's busy getting divorced. And this is the National Life of Librarians Conference. Again, we go from Aotearoa to the elms and look around the elms before coming on here. Cliff was talking about Colonel Greer before. who was the commander of the troops here. And Colonel Greer's great-grandson, I think, was here last week, so interesting that he was out here to see what his granddad was up to. I've got a tour next week of from the corrections department, which is all prison officers. Sorry, speak up. I've got a tour next week of all the prison officers, and I thought they would like to come and see. Do you know where the one music festival was held? Next to the domain, Whakapai domain. Well, formerly that was the parade ground for the Durham Redoubt, which is where the Durham Motor Inn is now, right? And so I said to this group, you'd probably like to go there. And they're saying, why? And I said, well, that's where Colonel Greer used to punish soldiers by strapping them to a frame and flogging them. And they said, oh no, we've changed since then. But again, here's another group coming here because of the interest in our history. So apart from doing all the Pukehinahina stuff, we're also going to, of course, concentrate on what happened at Te Ranga. And again, it's a commemoration that keeps growing year by year. So it happens every 21st of June. We have a commemoration service out there at Dawn. I think this is 2022. Again, one of the things we like to do is involve young people as well. And so these are some students from Aquinas College, which is just down the road. I'm trying to get them into the role of being kaitiaki or guardians for the site so they can look after it. And one of the things we do at the commemoration is read the ode. They shall have grown old as we that are left grow old. And they do it in English and Te Reo as well. So we've also got an enhancement plan for the reserve. What we want to do is to put in the car park, that should happen this year, a new car park, a boardwalk. Cliff mentioned before how you don't want to be digging up where there's the potential to find bodies, so we'll have a boardwalk that sits on top of the ground, and we'll go from this entranceway right to the memorial in the background there. The Pumokanga, which is the shed arrangement here, as you can see, on the inside wall it will tell the story of the battle, a bit like the information board you see around here if you do the little walk from the gateway down here and around up the path. So we'll have something like that in there, plus other ones along the pathway where appropriate. On the left, so the reserve has been listed in our hapu, no Tamalawa. Some of you might know that our urupa is out on the Wakaio estuary on Player Island. It's full. Well, we're having to stack people now. So what we're looking is to have part of the reserve converted into a new urupa for the hapu. Yeah, so it looks something like that. Before I go there, one of the things that we also want to do is with the remainder of the reserve is to plant it up in natives so that it becomes a recreational reserve, so it's got more than just, used as an historic thing. It really goes, we want you to actually go there and do something else as well. And so we're looking at, we've already started a major planting program down the steeper sides. You might have seen from Cliff's the illustration, planting up all along there. Currently in negotiation with my friends at the council again because they own the land adjacent, which is called Merrick's Farm. Part of Merrick's Farm is a swamp, but it's being used for dairying. This is not good. Why don't you join that bit to our bit
and then we can expand the range of plantings that we've got, and just add it to the recreational aspect of the reserve. Right? And people I've seen using the reserve, the police, is where they do their dog training. So if we've got one of those coats with long sleeves, go out there. And like Cliff, I just wanted to pay a tribute to my good friend who passed away recently, Perry Kuru. He's the new one here. A very strong advocate for our hapu. And just going back to that land loss question that Cliff touched on briefly, it came up in 1987 over the town hall. Now the town hall was sat on a piece of land called Lot 45. And Lot 45 was formerly held by the Church Missionary Society and taken off them by the government and ending up in the hands of the council. So the land was held by the Church Missionary Society under a trust which said this land is held for the benefit and welfare of Māori people. So our argument to the government was, you should be bound by the terms of your trust. It should, those terms should transfer to you. And we said the same thing to the council. Similarly, when you got the land from the government, the trust, the terms of that trust transferred to you as well. So in 1987, there was a big slush over this whole thing, and Perry ended up going to jail over it. So it's taken us until last year to fix it, where the council finally agreed, because I said to them, well, we can do this two ways. We can either talk about it, but my legal advice is we go to court, you're going to lose. So the new civic centre that's being built in town is half owned by us and half owned by the council. So that's a satisfactory outcome. I'm just sorry it happened a bit too late for my mate to see. Te ranga te rapiri, me Aotearoa. Oh, so this is a commercial? Me and this other bloke wrote that book, which is, as you were saying, has just been reissued. $40. So if you want a signed copy, leave me your name. They're going to be out after the 8th of February. Right, thank you. I'm going to try and answer any questions. Don't be shy, just me.
So the building is very impressive, but it was also very unusual. Was there a particular aspect of why it was created that way architecturally to represent perhaps what the building represents?
Yes, all that. But at the back of the room where we're first sitting, we've got our little model, scale model of the building, getting a bit of appreciation. You go and have a look at that. Now, the idea was just to give us something different, right? So it's a bit like watching cricket today. Then they had a drone shot with a drone went right up high, and you could see Moa and the whole harbour, and you just think, yeah, this is a great place, isn't it? So let's do things that, reinforce that idea. And so that's kind of the thinking behind some of the design elements.
So it doesn't represent like conflict and integration and all the things that when you become an architect you study all these things to try and put them into buildings.
Yes,
it's
yes.
not really about that.
If you have a look at the model, some of the cladding is designed to look like palisades. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Is there a website for that project that people can keep up to date with progress?
There will be. It's coming.
Fantastic.
In the meantime, there's a Facebook page.
Yep. Cool.
I was really worried when I heard about
the centre first because I thought we were going to plonk it down right out there. And I thought that site has such significance. And also geographically you can explain so well in terms of where they dug in and where movement was coming from and where the gardens were coming from and the kind of logistical problems. I'm so glad that the site is across the road.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just been changed in status from a recreational reserve to a historic reserve, which allows us to do what we intend to do. Just got to write the business plan.
We didn't hear the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, it was saying thank you for putting it where you put it, not in a difficult place.
Is it a done deal apart from the money? Is it all approvals are there, or are you still in a battle?
The question is it a done deal? We have lodged the resource consents. That happened at the end of last year. We're just going through that process now, having a little discussion with council about where the stormwater is going. One of the real issues is with traffic. You know this is a really difficult little corner, so having buses coming in and out presents a bit of a problem. So we've got a plan how we can address that. We've just got to get council to agree with us.
Who's going to fund the $55 million?
Well, I'm hoping to talk with a chap called Shane Jones. And he's a new Minister of Maori Development as well. To be honest, there's no museum that I know of that doesn't operate without the assistance of ratepayers. And so our plan is to try and make this as commercially viable as we can so that there isn't a big drain on ratepayers. We're going to get people.
How much will it cost to get in the door?
Nothing. We'll take a call out of it.
I'm Danish and I'd love to chip in, by the way. I was just wondering, what's the name of my countryman who was speaking up? The
Hans Tapsel.
Hans
Tapsel.
Doesn't ring a bell, I'm ashamed.
His real name is Hans Herman Feldman.
Yes.
Erickson.
I think he changed his name because depending on who you talk to him in Whanau, he's either a deserter or he's not. He's from the Danish Navy, right?
Yeah, he got the name from the top sailors.
Yeah, the questions.
Yeah. So, other than financial support, is there any other support that you would welcome from the community and from individuals? Because it's a big project.
Yes. The question is about the financing.
No.
Well, I'm looking to the local community as well. For example, TET has just given $21 million to the City Council for the development of the Civic Centre. Well, we got that much money, mate. Here's my handout. And I know there are a number of philanthropists in the city who are quite keen to support us. We're just working on a rough figure of $55 million for the build. We've got to complete a quantity survey exercise first to get a better idea on the costs.
My question was more, other than financial support,
yes,
are there other ways that we can help you to achieve this? So there's a lot of expertise in Te Ranga, people that are very skillful.
Oh, just talking about it among people, helps. The more people that know about the project, the better.
Thank you.
Well, by the way, 262 for 2 into play. Okay, well, thank you so much for your
coming tonight, and I especially want to thank Cliff, who's been here 2 Sunday nights in a row. It was a bit stressful tonight. I was sitting watching cricket and waiting for somebody or 2 people to get a century, and then I looked at my watch and I went, "You guys need to hurry up because I'm not supposed to be here anymore. I'm supposed to be in church." So you're lucky I even turned up. Thank you all for coming. And thank you, Buddy, for also being part of it. You did ask the question about why there didn't seem to be much animosity between Māori and Pākehā after the battle. You want to make a comment about that?
Well, here's an example. Meet John, mate.
It is different here, and so one of the things that people did talk about at the 150th commemorations was how different Tauranga's commemoration was to the Waikato commemoration. And in part that is due to people like Buddy and the work that they've done to make that a much more community-focused event. And it was astounding for those that, all the surrounding events, but actually the end of the day was mana whenua led, and you knew that in the moment we turned up at 5:30 in the morning for the first minutes. So thank you, Buddy, for being here tonight. Thank you for your passion and your energy and vision, both for commemoration 10 years ago and for what might happen this year. No pressure. And for the vision for what might happen across the road. I think that's an astounding vision. He does have an email list, and there will be a website and a Facebook page, and he's certainly open to any support and any offers of help, I'm sure, and large checks. So it was not really checks. Normally I have a call out to give to both, but I was watching cricket, so so another occasion. Thank you to all of you for coming. So next week we're having a week off, and then the Sunday after that, the 18th, Graham Cameron, Whirinako from Puna is coming, and he will be talking about faith and resistance by Mikaere in Tauranga, and that's his doctoral. So he's doing all sorts of amazing things in Te Whakaora Ministry of Health. He is the head Māori health advisor in there. And in his spare time, when he's not being a dad and involved in Whirinako affairs, he's also doing a doctorate. So that's his doctorate topic, and it's going to be a great night. So I'm really looking forward to hearing him. I've been trying to get him to come along for a few years, so this is a nice way to do that. So thank you all. So thank you again, Cliff. I think we should give him another clap. The other thing is on April the 29th, it is the 160th commemoration. I'm sure there'll be other things happening around that, but at 4 o'clock there will be a service here where we stop and remember what happened 160 years ago, and at 4:30 we ring the bells 60 times to remember all those who were killed here. And we're just beginning to do some work on what that might look like as well. So you're all invited to come on that occasion. So thank you all for coming.